I've been a modeler for my whole life. I belong to Greater Cincinnati Garden Railway Society. The railroads are built generally on about 4-foot sections, and the club standardizes things like the distance from the front of the board to the first rail and the distance between the rails, and then like the height of the boards. And then individuals own each of those modules for the most part. And they can take them home and do the decoration and the landscaping and whatever in their workshops. But with everything being standardized, when they come together at a show, they just put rail joiners on the end. They plug all the modules together. Usually they're standardized for the electrical connections that are underneath, and they build an enormous train layout. I mean, some of those train layouts. I mean, I've seen one in N gauge at one point that was almost 120 feet long, and it was a number of members of an N gauge club that all brought their modules to one place at one time and built just an enormous layout. And the nice thing is, if somebody can't show up for a show, they can just butt the other modules together and make up for it because they're all standardized. I really like the ones that are running live steam engines because it's something you really can't see around here, like the Durango and Silverton, like the Georgetown Loop Railroad. So we've taken a number of scenic train rides. We've ridden the Georgetown Loop Railroad quite a few times, actually. We rode the Georgetown Loop when we went out before we built. We rode the Georgetown Loop during the construction of ours. We went to Colorado and rode it to take more pictures. And we've ridden the Georgetown Loop since then. So that's one of my favorites for any number of reasons. We've ridden there's a couple of nice, even local trains. We rode Amtrak down to the Greenbrier in White Sulphur Springs. We got off of the train, went into the Greenbrier, had lunch, and by the time we got back out after lunch, the train that was returning from Washington, D.C. back to Cincinnati came by. We got on it and rode back to Cincinnati. So we were gone for about 20 hours. But if you're a train enthusiast, 20 hours on a train is not a big deal. Behringer Crawford Museum is in DeVoe Park, up overlooking the city of Cincinnati. The museum has been there as long as I can remember. I grew up in the Park Hills area, and I can remember going up with every little rock I ever had to the museum and asking them what it was. But just over the past years, as I was talking about Ray's layout and the weight, Behringer Crawford Museum has gone through just a phenomenal expansion. I think they've quadrupled the size or quintupled, 4 or 5 times the size of the museum, the display area in the museum. One of the things that they've done, and they've done this for a number of years, so it's really not new to the new museum, but they have a Christmas display. That Christmas display is three-rail Lionel, which again, three-rail Lionel just brings most of us back, at any rate, to the first train we ever had. Because I would say most kids, as they were growing up, the first train they got was a Lionel. Well, they have a Lionel set, three-rail Lionel set at Behringer Crawford that they set up at Christmas. And it is very whimsical, and it is, again, just fun. It's set up with the kids in mind. It's nice and low so that the younger kids can see over it. And about every 3 feet, all the way around the edge of it, there are red buttons. And every red button does something. It'll make a man saw logs. It'll make a swing set start. It makes one guy come out and hunt for a bear. It'll put down a crossing gate. Just everyone does something, some activity. And again, it's back to the Lionel is, in the earlier days, the action accessories for Lionel. And they have a lot of the older action accessories on there. The kids of all ages absolutely love that railroad. It is a fun railroad. It's too bad that it's only up at Christmas, but I think that probably makes it even more special. That's what that railroad's all about. It is just plain fun for the kids. The train that's being put in was built by a gentleman named Ray Farragher. Ray was a very, very dear friend of mine. Ray was I think he was probably the nicest guy I've ever met. And he built a train in his basement, and that's railroads that got us together. He was also a charter member of the Greater Cincinnati Garden Railway Society, just like I am. And that's what kind of got us to meet and got us going, talking about our mutual love of trains. Ray built that railroad over a period of probably 15 years, somewhere in that area. It is a railroad in G scale, so it's rather unusual in that it's a garden railroad, the G scale. It's the larger scale, but built indoors. Just due to space requirements, most G scale layouts are outdoors, but Ray's is indoors. But Ray took it far beyond anything you could ever do outdoors. Ray had just an unbelievable passion for that railroad. That was his job. When he retired, that became his job. He would go downstairs at 8 o'clock in the morning, and he'd come up when he got tired of working for the day. And I spent many, many days down in that basement with Ray. Every building on that railroad is stick built. It's built by hand. It's Luan, it's cardboard, it's you name it. The detail inside them is just absolutely overwhelming. And at some point you will have to come to the Behringer Crawford and just see it, because it's not anything somebody can explain and have you say, oh yeah, I get it. You have to see it. I probably helped Ray with that railroad for the last 5 years or so. I wasn't with him for the first 10, but at least the last 5 years I was helping him with it. And we were kind of a mutual admiration society. I loved his indoor layout and he loved my outdoor layout, so it all worked out well. G scale is roughly half-inch scale. It just so happens that half-inch is one of the more common, or one of the common dollhouse scales. There are two dollhouse scales for the most part, half-inch to the foot and 1 inch to the foot. Well, in half-inch to the foot, since that's G scale, you can shop dollhouse stores and buy the windows and the doors and a lot of the little details. And a number of the details on Ray's layout are dollhouse parts. Probably an equal number to that he made. If he couldn't find the part he wanted, he made the part he wanted. He's got a butcher's store where he made all of the meat that's in the meat cabinets. He's got a bakery where he made virtually all of the small-scale pies and cakes and you name it. with modeling clay and a little bit of paint. He'd make them. And it just, I mean, the railroad is unbelievable. All of the buildings, all of the people, all the details were meaningful to Ray, and they were all pieces of Ray's history and Ray's life. And a number of people that had helped him with the railroad have buildings on there. I have a John Lang company. It happens to be an engineering company. There's Sir Charles Pub after Charlie, one of the guys that helped him. There's Ben's Butcher for a Ben that helped him with the layout. There's Bootsy's Boutique. Well, Boots's Boutique is his wife, Ruth. So all of the buildings have some link to Ray. Accuracy to Ludlow? Not necessarily. I mean, as you look around the murals, you kind of say, okay, Cincinnati's over there and Covington's over. So the murals put it in about the right perspective for Ludlow. I don't think Ludlow ever had two trolley tracks running down the middle of their brick streets, but it doesn't matter. To Ray, it was Ludlow, and to me, it's Ludlow. And historically accurate, no. I would say it's very historically accurate, small town USA. But if Ray wanted it to be Ludlow, by golly, it's Ludlow. Well, Ray passed away 7 years ago. When he knew his days were numbered, he wanted the legacy of his railroad to live on beyond him. And he donated the railroad in its entirety to the Behringer Crawford Museum. At his memorial service, I promised Ray and his family that I would assure that the train was moved in a way that Ray would be proud of. And I would take care of long-term care and feeding of the railroad for as long as I was able to do that. So we sat and waited for about 6.5 years for the Behringer Crawford to get far enough along to actually start the move. And about 4 months ago, we dismantled the railroad at Ray's house. And we're starting over. That railroad was not built to be moved. The railroad was built to stay in one place for the rest of its life. So as we started taking it apart, we just found it was going to be impossible to simply separate it and move it. It was basically tear it down to the board, keep all of the structures, all of the people, all of the details, but for the most part, we're starting at the tabletop level and recreating. There was never a blueprint. You know, they wondering how I'm going about this reconstruction. There was never a blueprint, as I really don't think you would find anybody who's a model railroader has a blueprint. For the most part, you build something, and if it looks good, you keep it, and if it doesn't, you tear down and do something else. And that's sort of the way Ray was. He started with a single track. He added a second track. He added a third. He added a fourth. He added a fifth. I think by the end of the day, he might have had 6 rails running up there. But each one was just added one at a time. And all of the wiring was the same way. It was, we'll run a wire for this and run a wire for that. So there was no color coding. There was probably a mile of wire underneath that layout making everything work. But nothing's color coded. So no, there were no blueprints of any kind. What I did when I started is I just took my camera down and started taking pictures. And I got pictures from every angle on every side. And I've also got a number of pictures that he had taken over the years. And interestingly, I can show you in some of his past pictures, I can show you the same building in 3 different places on the layout where he even moved them around as he added to or changed the layout. So I have a very complete set of pictures of the railroad as it was when he passed away. And that's the railroad that we're recreating, and we're recreating as well as we possibly can off of his pictures. So hopefully when I'm done, if you look at one of the pictures in his house and you look at a picture taken inside the Behringer Crawford, it's the same railroad. You're not looking at a different railroad.